Well, Michael, welcome to my video channel here. So maybe we begin from introducing yourself, like your professional background as a military man, and then we'll move from there.
Okay. I think it's important to actually start a little bit further back than that because a lot of what shaped and molded me as a human being really started as I was a child, growing up in a fairly strict Catholic household to begin with, and then after that in a broken household where my parents got divorced, and it was a really ugly divorce. There was a lot of violence, alcohol abuse, and a little bit of prescription drug abuse, and so it was a pretty rough childhood growing up, and I never realized how much it impacted me till I got here to Huachuma Wasi. But after that, at the end of high school, I was told by my mom basically that I had three choices. It was either Army, Navy, or Marines, and that's it. There was no college in my future. There was no going off on a hiatus and doing some traveling. It was straight into the military, and I enlisted at 17 years old into the Marine Corps. And I ended up spending about 16, 17 years right in there. And the interesting part about my Marine Corps time is that I came in during a period towards the end of the Cold War, but really at the strongest peak of it. That was when Ronald Reagan was the president, and Gorbachev was the president in Russia. And indoctrination happened for me during that time period, to basically hate communists and want to kill Russian people. And so I spent the time there. I did 2 combat tours while I was in the military. I did one for Desert Storm and Desert Shield, and ended up in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait for the war. And then after that, I ended up spending some time in Somalia for a combat tour. And during my time period, I spent most of my time in Marine Corps Special Forces, so in what's called a Force Reconnaissance platoon. And my job was to go behind enemy lines and collect information for the assault force commanders that were going to bring in infantry troops. And the highlight of my career really for myself was at the end of it, I ended up going to Holland and being stationed with the Dutch Royal Marine Corps. And for 4 years I worked in their military as an advisor and as a member of their military. And so I got out of there. So I went in there at 1982, came out in 1998, and then I ended up just kind of doing some odd jobs. The Marine Corps wasn't for me at that time, and I ended up getting hired by the Seattle Fire Department, and I ended up spending about 16 wonderful years with the Seattle Fire Department as a firefighter and an emergency medical technician. And it was a wonderful time. I've spent most of my life kind of rescuing and helping people. And the really interesting thing for me, or at least my view on going into the fire department is that I was going to be able to give back to humanity what I felt that I took while I was in the military. And I thought that that was going to be something that was going to kind of heal my soul. And after 15, 16 years there, I met the minimum retirement age and I left. But what I learned from that is that it was a very fulfilling job in that I got to be out there all the time rescuing and helping people. But I really never realized how much damage that was doing to my soul and my body for that matter. And I didn't realize that until I got to Huachuma Wasi and started the healing process. But that entire time was just in a very busy part of the city of Seattle, where there was a lot of shootings, stabbings, fires, car wrecks. Every single shift, I was probably averaging 15 911 calls in a 24-hour period. And it really took its toll on me through sleep deprivation, through watching just a lot of sorrow, destruction, loss, and it really did a lot of damage to me internally that I later discovered once I got here to Huachuma Wasi. So after I retired from the military, I ended up doing another 4 or 5 years in the cannabis industry in Washington State, and I opened 3 cannabis stores. The brand name is House of Cannabis, and we are in 3 locations: Tacoma, Washington, and Twisp and Tonasket, Washington. And it's a very successful business. And I went through some hard times with my partners and ended up being excused from the business. I still own the business, but I was replaced as a managing and operating member of the business. And my wife and I put a lot of hard work and our retirement savings into that to open that up. So that was a really powerful, tragic time for me. It really created a lot of hurt, a lot of deep damage to me inside, because I had done such a wonderful job and a successful job at opening those stores. And then once they were opened, I was removed by two people who really didn't have a lot to do with the actual opening of the stores. And so after that happened, I realized that there were no more wars to fight. There were no more people to rescue. There were no more stores to open. And then I was just sitting there alone. And though I was with my wife, I felt completely unfulfilled and empty inside, and deeply hurt from what had happened. And I was drinking a lot. I was using a lot of cannabis and self-medicating in order to get to sleep, in order to put away the very deep hurt feelings that I had inside. I was a very angry person and very unpredictable. And I might add at this time is that throughout my entire adult life, I suffered from extreme depression and also social anxiety. And so, I suffered from suicidal ideation most of my adult life, and numerous times throughout my career in the fire department. And then while I was working in the cannabis industry, I was very close multiple times to killing myself, because I just couldn't deal with the pain and suffering that I had inside of my heart. It just almost made me feel like I was drowning, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And it was really hard for me to deal with, because on one hand, I would go to work in the fire department and I'd be saving other people's lives, and then I would come home from work and I would think about killing myself. And the contrast between those two were just so hard for me to come to grips with. And so I got to that final point, and I realized that I needed to do something drastic with my life. I understood that I didn't really want to die. I just wanted the symptoms that were making me feel like that I wanted to die. I wanted those to go away. And so, and I loved my wife deeply, and I looked in the mirror and I loved who I was. I just needed to get rid of that. And so I started doing some deeper searching. And I had some plans with a friend to go down to the Amazon and drink ayahuasca, thinking that was going to be what was going to save my life. And my friend backed out on me, and then I kind of just went through and looked at some other options, and I came across Huachuma Wasi. And when I did, I sent the email off to you. And the first questions that I asked you in the email was, do you guys do actual work there? Because I'm coming to work, and I knew that I had to work hard to take care of what was going on inside of me, and I really wanted that bad. I didn't want to go to some bougie retreat where you have cappuccinos after your ayahuasca session and pedicures and group hikes and tours and stuff. I was interested in coming and working hard to make myself the best person that I could be. And so that's it right there.
I mean, cappuccino is cool, but
I love cappuccinos, but healing is healing, and I really wanted that bad, so I wanted it to work.
Okay, wonderful. So that's a really great introduction that kind of boils down the whole, the background. So maybe we can talk about like your previous psychedelic experience in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Just maybe you share, what you work with, how was it. Just everything you can share.
So when I was actually 15 years of age, I moved. My parents had gotten divorced, and we moved from the East Coast of the United States to a city really close to Seattle, Washington. And I got into this new school, and at the time I was already a pretty troubled kid. I was at 15. I was drinking, and I was smoking a lot of marijuana. And when I got to Seattle, Washington, got to high school and got in with some kids that one day took me out to pick magic mushrooms in Seattle. And so I had my first mushroom experience at 15 years of age. And when I had those mushrooms, I had an effect that I noticed that the other teenage people that were eating mushrooms didn't have. It had a really profound effect on me, and what I mean by that is that it wasn't that I had a psychedelic experience, but it was something else happened to me, and it changed something internally with me, so it completely wiped away my depression and my anxiety and the bad feelings I was suffering from my parents' divorce and everything. And so even when I saw it, my parents' divorce and my life and how unsatisfied I was with it, I saw something different within myself, and I was at peace with what was going on in my life. And so for me, I started eating mushrooms on a pretty regular basis at the age of 15. And my parents kind of knew what was going on, and they always kind of just really chastised me and beat on me for taking drugs and getting high. And instantly, I didn't see that with mushrooms. I started taking mushrooms, and I was taking mushrooms to be well and to be connected to myself inside. And so that went on literally for almost 20 years of my life, all throughout my time in the military. So I didn't walk around taking mushrooms in the military, but when I had a vacation, I would always plan it for the fall when the rains would start at my home in the Seattle area. And I would go on vacation from the military and go home, and I would pick as many mushrooms as I could. I would take mushrooms while I was home, and that helped me to regenerate so I could go back to the military and do my life there. And I would also bring some mushrooms back with me and hide them and just use mushrooms maybe once a month, once every 6 months, whatever was good, because I needed to make my supply last. And so when I got out of the military, I moved back to Seattle, Washington, and met a woman, and we got married. And I might say that during my military time, I was married for about 12 years, and I ended up getting a divorce, and that was directly related to my anxiety, my depression. And so we got divorced, and I came back to Seattle, and I ended up meeting a new woman, and we got married, and we got a home in that area, and I got right back into my mushroom thing. So I started growing them at my house. And not just indoors, but outdoors. And so at that time, I was eating mushrooms just about every single day. Well, let's say 3 or 4 times a week, and just microdosing. And that went on for the entire time that I was in the fire department. And actually, I mean, at that point in my life, after my Marine Corps experience, I absolutely needed those mushrooms to survive. Like if I went more than a week or so, the suicidal ideation just got so much. But the mushrooms did a really good job of bringing that down and managing that for me. But I didn't always have access to it because mushrooms being a Schedule 1, and me being a firefighter, that forced me to go out there and commit felony crime as somebody, who's in uniform and serving the people of Seattle. And that was really disturbing for me. Like I was willing to do whatever it took to get my mental well-being in check, but it created a whole new paradigm and a new problem within me. Is that here I am, I'm this bad person, I'm a criminal, I'm a felon, and I had a really hard time dealing with that because most of my life, all of my life, other than mushroom and cannabis use, I've been a law-abiding citizen, and I believe in the rule of law. I really do. To provide order in society, we need that. And so I really struggled with that. And I had periods of time where I couldn't get access to the mushrooms, and my life would start spiraling out of control almost immediately when that happened. And I would turn to other things like alcohol, LSD, MDMA, ketamine. And so, it really caused a lot of problems for me. And actually, enough to where I had periods of my life where I used cocaine habitually and used methamphetamine habitually. And I'll just say about those two things that mushrooms is what got me off of those drugs, cocaine and methamphetamine. And so after that, when I retired from the Marine Corps, from the fire department, and I went into my period of opening up the cannabis stores, I found that to be the hardest experience of anything that I'd ever done in my life because I was over 50 years of age. and I had these stores that I was opening physically, doing the remodeling in the spaces and selling cannabis to the customers, because I'm I'm an entrepreneur, and I have to, in the beginning, do all of that myself. And mushrooms really got me through all of that, and not just through the emotional part of it, but it gave me that extra bit of energy that I really needed to get through that, because I was working 12-hour days, the first part of it, 12-hour days, 8 days a week or 7 days a week. And so the mushrooms really helped me out with that. And actually at one period of that time there, I ate mushrooms every day for over 600 days in a row.
Microdosing?
No, not always. Usually closer to about a quarter of a gram to a half a gram. So I actually had threshold psychedelic effects. Not heavy, but I have a connection with mushrooms, and I can take any amount, and I'm able to work in that space completely. You would never know it. I could do very technical and physical tasks.
Jumping into the fire, arresting people while you're high on 10 grams or something?
No. I never, so I ate low, very microdosing before I would go to work with the fire department, but I never went into work at the fire department with threshold experiences happening, and that just didn't happen.
So what's the highest you took in dry?
So I've taken as many as 15 grams or more, but so the mushrooms that I picked in Washington State, you have probably 6 different types of hallucinogenic mushrooms in Washington State, and so there's a variety called Stunsiais and cyanescence, and a combination of those, I've eaten over 15 grams. I've definitely eaten close to a half an ounce of Cubensis. I have a tolerance to them a little bit, but my mind also just works with it. So even though I get really, really high and out there, I'm able to function really well in that space.
So it seems like you're naturally wired for tryptamine space.
I would say so, but I believe I'm more wired for Huachuma space. For sure.
We'll get to that point. Yeah. So then, what's the experience with DMT? How you got to that?
So with DMT, it was just part of my psychological or my psychedelic journey. And what happened is, once I got out of the fire department, out of the Marine Corps, I came home, and something magical happened: the internet. And we didn't have the internet before that. And so this was in 1999, 2000, right in there. And I was just surfing through one day, getting some information on mushrooms. And at that time, most of the web pages looked like these DOS spreadsheets is really what it looked like. And there was a website that I came across, and it was called DMT World. And it was the first website out there on DMT, and these guys were really the pioneers, and in some ways I consider myself one of the pioneers in that era and in my area. And so they had a recipe on there for a very crude extraction, and so I got online, and there was a vendor down in Florida, gentleman named Robert Johnson, and he's still out there today, and he has a website called Heavenly Products. And so I went through the website, and they had everything in there, from just about every type of plant medicine from the Amazon and from around the world. And so I ordered root bark, Mimosa hostilis root bark, and actually I think the first batch I got was off of eBay before they banned it. And I followed the recipe and did my very first extraction, and it looked pretty bad, like a kind of a orangish oil, but I worked with it, and I smoked it straight up pure, and it was a complete life-changing experience. It was a rocket ride in about a nanosecond after I inhaled it, and it scared the living daylights out of me. I've never been so scared in my life. But for whatever reason, I must be wired for that, like you said, for tryptamines, because after that period, so as the internet evolved and as people started doing this, more information started coming into the internet on how to do this, and new websites opened up. One I'd like to mention for sure, the DMT Nexus, and it's out there. It's probably the world's foremost leading authority on DMT, and I spent a lot of time there refining my extraction techniques. And I actually became a moderator of the website, and I still am. And so that's kind of where it went. But one of the things I'd like to mention is that as I refined my processes, I started smoking a lot more DMT. And I got to say that probably 90% of the journeys that I had on it were horrific. They scared me to death, every one of them. But the crazy thing about that medicine is that I would sit down on my couch in a certain place in my room and meditate, and then I would use it. And I knew going into it that there was going to be 100% fear and annihilation that was going to happen. And yet I still came back to it every single time. And I just said, I'm going to take this annihilation because there's something there that's for me and that I'm connecting with. And so as time went on, the techniques to make something that's called changa. So it's the two components of ayahuasca that's infused into different types of herbs. So you have the DMT, and then you have different types of harmalines or tetrahydroharmaline that potentiates the DMT, and it allows it to come on slower and last longer. And so I would do these extractions. I would infuse these components into some different herbs like mullein and some lemon balm and coffee leaf, and I would make a mixture that I would then smoke, and it would, or vaporize, I should say, and the experience slowed down, so it wasn't as terrifying, and it lasted longer, so I was able to navigate it, and I was then able to go really deep within myself and start asking myself some really important questions. And so that went on for, well, it's still going on to this day. But I would like to say one thing about it. During that time period in my life that I've now realized through my Huachuma use is that my approach to these sacred plants and how I use the medicine, even though I felt like I was getting a lot out of it, and I'm sure that I did, but I was using other drugs in combination with those. And so when I started doing high doses of mushrooms, I'd get towards the end of my mushroom experience and I'd start drinking alcohol because I'd start to have these kind of more negative effects in my body that I got to the point where I'm done with this experience now, so I'm going to drink a bunch of alcohol to just kill it and then go to sleep. But what I've since learned is that the end of those psychedelic experiences, when it got hard, that's where the learning, that's where the healing was happening. And I was taking the alcohol and I was killing that last part of it. And so I really learned that when I quit drinking alcohol for a period in my life, and then I realized that I was getting different effects from the mushrooms, different effects from the DMT. And so that's it in a nutshell. And so that's kind of what gave me the courage to come down here and do this. Like, I didn't hesitate. I didn't think, oh, I don't know about this Huachuma and what's going to happen to me. I'd been annihilated thousands of times. So
just ready for healing now.
Yes.
Okay, so then you came here, and what was your intention for coming here?
So in the weeks leading up to coming here, like I said, I was at that point in my life. No one left to rescue, no more wars to fight, no more stores to open, and I really just spiraled down into some really deep depression. And I came to a point where I knew that if I didn't do something about it, that I was going to die. And if I wasn't going to die with my own hands, I just had this deep sense of impending doom within my soul and within my heart. And so I finally talked to my wife about it, and I said, listen, I love you, and we need to do this. My wife was also struggling with her own depression and her own, little disorders inside of herself. She wanted to heal as well. And I will say this, is that a lot of that in my wife came from me and what I drug her through over the years, and and all this whole experience that we went through. And I came to her and just explained everything to her. And my wife looked me in the eye and she said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get you off and get you healed first. And because we've talked over the years about ayahuasca and different plant medicine therapies. And so she stood behind me and she said, we're going to get you here first. And then after that, we'll deal with me. And to this day, it's just, incredible when I understand the love that she had for me, just looking at how I was in the space that I was in, and she needed that help just as much as I did, and she loved me so much, and she had the courage to stand up and say, Mike, let's get you taken care of. And I think she felt deep down inside that if I came back from this healed, that
she would fall.
She would fall, and she would become a better person out of it. So I did, like I said, before I did my research, I found Huachuma Wasi, and not a moment too soon. Mine was pretty quick. There wasn't a lot of going back and forth between you and me. I already knew what I wanted. I didn't care about the price. I didn't care where it was at. I just had to be here. So I got my ticket and did everything I needed to do to get here. And I flew out of Portland, Oregon, and I got to Orlando. And what happened at that point, and I just like to say, I haven't drank any alcohol since the 1st of the year, 1st of January. I hadn't. I got to Orlando. I got to tell you, I am petrified of flying, and I don't know how I made it to Orlando. I was scared to death the entire time. So we got to Orlando. And I was sitting around, and I was scared to death to get on the next flight. And I was like, Mike, listen, you're going to Huachuma Wasi. You haven't drank once this year, and I'm scared to death. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go into this cocktail lounge. I'm going to have a drink and just take the edge off, calm my nerves down. So I went into the cocktail lounge, and I had maybe 2 or 3 drinks. I wasn't, but I mean, just being honest here, I wasn't drunk or anything like that. I felt good. And anyways, I was getting ready to get on the plane, and I reached to grab my passport, and I couldn't find it. They had already made the call, like we're boarding this plane. And so to this day, I lost my passport, so I couldn't get on the plane. And I retraced my steps. I went everywhere. I have no idea where the passport is. It definitely wasn't left in the bar that I was sitting in. I looked all around everywhere before I left the bar, and before I even knew my passport was gone. But I looked everywhere. I couldn't find my passport, and so I ended up having to fly back from Orlando, all the way back to Portland, drive up to Seattle. And this happened over a period of 10 days. I did this turnaround. I got an emergency passport replacement, got a new airline ticket, and this time I flew out of Los Angeles and got here. But one of the things I'd like to say is that through my Huachuma sessions, here's what I believe happened with the passport. I believe, first off, that I made a commitment to myself to quit on January 1, which I did. And I made it all the way to probably February 8th or 9th. And I drank alcohol in that airport. Now, what I think happened is that the universe struck back at me because I made a commitment that I'm going to be clean. I'm going to go down to Huachuma Wasi clean and get my healing done. And when I went back on my word, and my integrity was shattered from drinking. And I think the universe said, Mike, we're going to teach you a little lesson. Mm-hmm. I think that passport just disappeared.
Wow, that's a very interesting story.
Yeah, so then when I finally got here, I mean, that whole process of getting to Orlando, then going back, and all I went through to get back to Huachuma Wasi, it took every last drop of tank that I had drop of fuel that I had in my tank. I mean, when I got here, I was on fumes, and I literally remember when I walked through your gate, I had this overwhelming feeling of I made it, and I'm not going to die, because I was physically going to succumb and die. I felt that on the taxi on the way to get here. I was like ready to have a panic attack. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I thought I was literally going to expire. And when I walked through that gate, I was like, okay, it's going to be all right.
Yeah, imagine a taxi driver delivers you dead here. It's like, man, after all your wars,
I mean,
fires.
like, for the people who are listening to this, it's serious. I mean, I was this close to expiring. It's just a feeling of impending doom that I had, and there was no doubt in my mind. I got here right on time.
Well, a little bit late, you know.
Well, but you know what? There's a lesson in there though, for sure. Like I needed to feel that.
Yeah.
In order to feel the way I do now, I needed to experience that.
Well, it's all payments, you know.
Yep.
We pay for healing, and money is not the first and the last payment, you know. It's actually the least of everything we pay for actual healing, you know. So maybe now you can share about your actual experience here over the 5 weeks. Tomorrow is the last ceremony. So how was it for you?
Wow, so much has happened so fast. So I'd like to just start back at the beginning. And so when I first arrived here, I want to talk about first. I arrived here on a Tuesday afternoon, and I came in, and the first thing you told me is, okay, you're drinking medicine tomorrow. And a couple of things that I noticed. I had a lot of anxiety about what was going to happen. The altitude was it was really kicking my butt. I'm like, oh man. And that was just like, when you said that to me, it just kicked the fear into overdrive. But I got up to my room, I got unpacked, and I got to say the accommodations, I was really happy about that. The accommodations were wonderful. The bed was great, shower, I could just, if I wanted to be alone in my room, I had a little kitchenette there. Everything was just perfect. So in that sense, and I do suffer from a level of anxiety, so that was, okay, this is good right here, especially if I don't ever have to leave my room. And so that's where I stayed at first, and there was a couple of other people here, but I didn't really, I met them, but I didn't interact with them at all the first few days. And what happened was I just stayed in my room. I came out, I did the first ceremony. The first ceremony just rocked me to my core, and in a lot of good ways. I mean, there was nothing bad about it. The experience was difficult, and I got to say I came into it with some intentions, and the intentions was simply, kind of what we discussed. I am here, I am open to the medicine, and please help me. And that was as simple as it was, and that really worked for me. And it was a very powerful day, and I don't have a lot of, really, at this point, a lot of memory of actually what happened in it. It was mostly deep physical effects and no visual effects or anything like that. And I just kind of laid there and enjoyed nature and enjoyed the scenery, and I got through it. And I was like, at the end of it, I was like, all right, you made it day one, we're going to make it through another day. And so a really nice tradition that happens here at Huachuma Wasi that was deeply healing for me was that in the evenings after our ceremonies, the people that are staying here get together and we have a fire in the fireplace, and we kind of talk about what happened to each of us. And they told me about that, and they said dinner is going to be down here in the fire. And so I came down, and I was just only there for a few minutes, and I took my food upstairs, and I skipped out on the fire. And I had anxiety, I had a lot of feelings about what I had just experienced, and so it just wasn't for me. And I went up into my room, and basically what I was doing was hiding.
Well, you had enough fire during the 17 years working in the fire department.
Yeah, I've always been deeply connected to fire, so I realized that the fire has been part of my healing. I had the next day off, and I just stayed in my room, and I think I went shopping and got some things, and just really like, okay, man, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but I know it's going to happen because the first time I met you, Sergey, I got to say, something just deep inside of my soul said, you can trust this guy, Mike. And I've always been a big control freak throughout my entire life. So I have a hard time letting go to people, especially even my wife, after 20 years. And so, I just kind of went for it. And the next day that we had the next ceremony, I had a ceremony, and the second ceremony was almost identical to the first. It was all physical, no visuals, not too much mental contemplation. It was all just enjoying nature and kind of just taking it inside, get that cleansing happen. And so when I got back that evening, the other three people that I'm here with were in there, and they were trying to start a fire. And I've been connected to fire all my life, and not just because I'm a fireman, but at my house back in Washington, we have a huge fire pit. And during the summertime, my wife and I have a big fire, a huge fire, every single night. And so I'm quite good at starting fires, and I was watching them struggle with it. And so I came over and I said, hey, I don't mean to be rude or take any of your responsibility away from you, but would you mind if I start this fire tonight? And they all looked at me and they're like, no, please do. So I had a roaring fire going in about under 2 minutes, and they were just like all looking at it like, wow, what's going on here? And I just felt in that moment a connection, and a voice said to me, Mike, fire is healing for you, and imagine your problems burning in that fire and going straight up the chimney. And I was like, oh, wow. And I was still on Huachuma when I came back that day. And I saw the look on their faces, and they said to me, hey, come here and sit down for a little bit. And they didn't want me to go up to my room. They wanted me to sit down with them and eat and share the day. And so I did. And I had a hard time at first talking to them. I had a lot of anxiety. But by the end of the evening, we were all hugging and crying and laughing. And I realized that I have to be down here with these three every single night, because this is super healing for me. And but there was some obstacles even there, because the group that I'm with, so the oldest person's 35. Well, my son's that age, and so I noticed a couple of things immediately. We would come back throughout the healing process. We would come back and sit around the fire, and I'm listening to all these fantastic stories, about what they experienced in their Huachuma experience. And, oh, I was transformed into an Incan queen, and oh, I traveled to this place in outer space in another dimension, and they're all just like telling all these wild stories, and I believe 100% of what they're saying. I know that happened because I know these people. But for me, I'm like, oh my God, I was on the ground all day, just like in trauma, going through life review and all of these things, and I don't want to describe that as a bad experience, what I was going through. Like, it felt to me good, like I knew I'm healing, so I'm going to continue with this. But it was sometimes very discouraging, because I thought, wow, when's this going to happen to me? And then I got to a point where, like, no, this isn't even ever going to happen to me. But I went through it, and then the other thing I noticed is that we had, these younger kids, and I've learned this now, and Huachuma's explained this to me, is that I came in here at 57 years of age, and I brought a lot of baggage in here over those years that I collected. And the youngest guy is 24 years old, and basically within 5 ceremonies, he was just out there, woohoo, enjoying life, and I just, like, it was hard for me to understand. And but it was explained to me. It's like, hey, you're older, you got more baggage, there's more to fix. And so once I got into that and understood that, the healing started to happen faster at that point. This was for, like, I did ceremony 13 the other day, and so probably by about ceremony 8, things started to fall into place for me. There was still a lot of deep healing that happened after that, but I finally could see the light at the end of the tunnel and realize, oh, okay, this is starting to happen for me now. And so, that was, having the other people here was incredible. It was wonderful. And I just can't say enough, like, how much that helped me with my healing process, because there was times where, though the healing was it was pure love and light, there was another side to it that, that was kind of, at times, a little discouraging and dark, but that was just because it was a reflection of my past, and and we're doing a life review, and so but that transpired actually relatively quick. So that wasn't like I felt in a dark place like the whole time I was going through this healing process. It was just little moments in time, and but it was at times contrary to what I thought was going to happen, with the healing. But I look back on it now, and I really needed that, and it's made me such a strong person now. And so I guess the last couple of things I'd like to say just about my experience here, it's been wonderful. Like as far as the facility is just amazing. It brings me into a very, just a calm place, calm state at peace. Having the town of Calca here is just wonderful. The people are just so beautiful. They're so friendly. You don't hear sirens. You don't hear gunshots. People, there's no angry, mean, violent people here. It's the whole community, and it's just so it really helped me with my healing experience, and yeah, it's just been amazing. It really has.
So, what would you say, like, what place Huachuma has now in your life? Among other plant medicines that you love and work with and will work with, how that changes that relation?
Well, it's in a couple of ways, and so I'd just like to I'd like to say right now that I've never had the deep connection quite like I have with Huachuma with any other plants, and I would like to just say that. So when I talk about my mushroom experience. I've taken mushrooms. If you combined all my DMT mushroom experiences, I've taken them combined probably close to 2,000 times. I mean, I've been taking mushrooms for over 40 years, and so it's a long time. But because of the way that I was using mushrooms in the past, I didn't get the full potential that medicine had for me. And I didn't develop the relationship that I have developed with Huachuma because, I wasn't able to, like I said earlier, that I self-medicated with alcohol in order to take the hard experiences away. And so if you would say, okay, the old Michael, how would you use Huachuma? If I was using that by myself, I would have used it, and then as the experience really started to get hard on me, I probably would have taken something else to take that away. But that's where the lesson is, in that pain, in that trauma that you're kind of reliving, And so, so since I've been here, I've developed a connection with Huachuma that I haven't with any other plant medicine. But that said, towards the end of my, so in the last couple of Huachuma ceremonies that I've had, Huachuma has explained to me that I need to get back and I need to go do mushrooms the exact same way I do Huachuma. And I asked how, like, what are you talking about? What's going to be different? And what has to happen is to go back in ceremony and express my gratitude, express my feelings and and basically apologize and make acknowledge that the way I was doing it before wasn't right, and that I'm coming at it with a new approach, a sober mind, a clean body, a healthy body, and that I want to dive back into mushrooms. And Huachuma is every session is encouraging me. As soon as you get back, you need to jump back in. And I will say that since I've been here, I have had a mushroom experience on one of my days off, and the mushrooms came to me and said, just the spirit that was talking to me, which is me, was just completely elated and I can't wait for you to get home so we can reconnect. And so Huachuma, I have that relationship, which is right now just incredible. But I understand now that when I get back, my relationship with mushrooms is going to a next level. I got to tell you, my entire adult life, I've always seen within myself and looked at myself as a mushroom practitioner. And I've certainly helped other people in my life with mushrooms who were suffering from drug abuse, depression, and the amazing thing is that when I went to help those people with that medicine, some of them took off and never, they healed and never did any of the things that I was doing, but here I am, this broken person, helping other people out. And it's very reminiscent of my fire department time, where I'm saving people's life, but I want to kill myself. And here I am saving a person's life by using mushrooms, And yet I'm using mushrooms in a way that isn't even,
helpful.
yeah. So it's been a crazy life as far as that goes.
I remember I told you that in the first ceremony that that will happen, but then it just was words. Now it's actual experience. Now you understand what it meant then. So it's really great to hear all that. I see your progress and just amazing. And it's also important to mention that you brought to the table important things. You brought courage, trust, sincerity. And that's what makes the healing what it is. The medicine is a part of it. It's a big part of it. But it's also the medicine person behind it is very important. But also what you bring to the table. The medicine doesn't do work by itself. It doesn't just fix you up if you are not willing to work on yourself and actually look inside and do the work. Which you did, and now you see the results. You're back. Your life is back. Just starting, actually. Sure. Just starting a whole new chapter in life, and that's really amazing, powerful story. I really wanted to share that with people, and that's of course boiling this down. I mean, there's so much more happened over the 5 weeks here, and conversations and all this that we went through, But to boil it down, it's all good. It's all it shows, it shows the process and the progress and the healing. So anything else you want to share, just anything on your mind, on your heart?
I would. So what I would like to say, and I don't know if it's even possible to work this out in the future, but I consider myself now an ambassador of the medicine and an ambassador of Huachuma Wasi. And I would just like to say that if anybody in the future is looking for more information and they want to directly talk to somebody who has experienced it, I'm going to leave you some information on how to contact me. And people out there in the web that come across this, and if they're really considering this, I have no problems with giving out my phone number, my email address to start, and just let's talk. Because, like I said before, my whole life I've been out there saving and rescuing people, and that's just how I'm geared and how I'm driven. And if I can just save one person by giving my testimony and talking further and helping them to be able to get over that fear and come here, I would love to do that.
Thank you, Michael. That's very generous of you, and I'm sure you will get some emails, And I'm looking forward to see your wife in 3 weeks?
And she'll be here in 3 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah, she saw my change happen. We talked every night, face to face on the phone. And originally she told me, I don't know. And then she said to me, once I got here, I was like, this place is great. And like on the second or third day, she just said, stop. I don't want any more of this. I want to talk to you and I want to hear about your experience, and I don't want to hear what you think about me coming here. Yeah. This is about you. And what happened after about 2 ceremonies ago, I called her up and she told me and my sister are coming down. And it was all because of them watching my transformation over 5 weeks. And Huachuma heals indirectly through people. You don't have to drink the medicine to be impacted by the medicine. And that's proof positive right there.
It's certainly a magical plant teacher.
No doubt.
It has its ways. Well, that's a very, very beautiful closure for 5 weeks, 5 beautiful weeks spending with us.
Every second of it.
And it was great having you here, really. It's like, it will be sad when you leave on Wednesday,
I'll be back.
Yeah.
I'll be back.
Maybe if you become my neighbor here eventually. We can grow a lot of mushrooms here. I have no more space here. It's like I have like a lot of cactus here.
Right.
But we can just purchase land next door and just grow more medicine,
For me, wellness is a way of life, and Huachuma is a part of that. So this is going to be a part of my life forever. And I see where Huachuma is beneficial. It's not just while you're healing, but reinforcement for integration for so many things.
It's certainly a powerful base for whatever you do. That gives you a rhythm of life.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. It was really lovely talk here. We could go more, but I don't want to make it too long because people
That was
don't watch
perfect.
long interviews, you know. Although I will definitely recommend people do take the time to watch this entirely, you know. And
Probably the last thing I would like to say is thank you, Sergey. Thank you for your beautiful family. Thank you for the never-ending flow of love that you dropped on me the entire time I was here. I mean, that you guys saved my life. You and your family
Thank
and
you.
the medicine. Thank you so much.
of course, man, of course, of course.
Oh
Of
man,
course.
it's been so
You're
good.
welcome. You're welcome.
And I smile now. Before I came here, I never
Yes.
smiled.
And you got a picture of yourself when you
Yeah,
stepped
first-
through this door. That wasn't.
I have that picture for
That
sure.
wasn't a happy guy there. You know?
No,
Well, now you are. Well,
Yep.
take another picture before you leave.
I definitely will. During tomorrow's ceremony.
Yep. Yep. Sounds good, Michael. Thank you very much.
All right.
Good luck.